Good evening, everyone. Myself Subhan, and I welcome you in this auspicious event. Sky has been the friend of humankind since antiquity. The night sky and its phenomena, in particular, have been the focal attraction point for human race since prehistoric times. Life on the other planets, as life has also a charm in the human fantasies and science enthusiasts as well. Adding to it, meteors, sometimes which we call shooting stars, often present a special view of night sky through events of meteor showers, in which a number of meteors are observed to radiate or originate from a point in the night sky. The months of April is also a spectre to such a specters in the form of lit meteor showers. Scientific Knowledge for Youth Sky Foundation and Ignited Minds Whipnet Club, in collaboration with Existing Initiative, Sky Amateur Astronomers Whipnet Club, and Women in Science Whipnets Club, now welcome participants across the globe to join this event, a shared digital resource initiative to stir the minds of the people across the globe through the today's Google Hangouts Meet. I welcome all my esteemed audience and also extend my special greetings to all the presents on behalf of EduSTEM and Sky for the World Book and Copyright Day today. Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
welcome all.
Shweta.
The time has just begun. So, myself, Amritanshu Vajpayee, I welcome you all to today's program. And our first speaker for the day is Anavi Uppal, who shall be who is actually a senior in the high school from Orlando, Florida. She is a former NASA intern and will be attending Yale University this fall after September to study astrophysics. And I extend special thanks to EduSTEM co-founder Archika Dograji, a former NASA intern herself, for arranging the session of such a diverse personality for today's opening session. Now, I would just like to throw a bit of insight over what Anavi Uppal is going to introduce us to. Since the beginning of space exploration, humans have wondered if life exists on the other planets. Recently, NASA rovers has seen possible indicators of life on the planet Mars. This summer, NASA again is planning to send a new rover to Mars specifically to look for the signs of life. So, without wasting any time in any other formal introduction, I would like to invite our first speaker for our opening session of the day, Miss Anavi Uppal. Over to you, Anavi ji.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. So today I'll be presenting on NASA's search for life on Mars. Ever since we went into space, the very first time, we've wondered if Earth is the only place in the universe with life. But as we look at our galaxy, just our galaxy, not even looking at other galaxies, we see that that's highly unlikely. Just in our galaxy, there are over 100 billion planets. Out of that 100 billion, we are one. So imagine the probability that we are the only one in this 100 billion. And for a little perspective, since in astronomy, there are such huge numbers that we tend to lose perspective of how big these numbers really are. 1 million seconds, if we were to count that, would amount to 11 days, while 100 billion seconds, 100 billion, the number of planets, would amount to over 3,000 years. So this number of planets is truly astronomical in size. In fact, there could have been life on one of our closest neighbors at some point, Mars. Many times in the past, however, even before we sent missions to space, there have been false claims of life on Mars. As humans, we like to see patterns that are familiar to us. So when we look at things that are unfamiliar, like the surface of Mars, we think that we see things that are similar to life on Earth. The very first example of this was when astronomers first looked at Mars with their earliest telescopes in the 1800s. Many astronomers thought that they saw lines on the surface of the Earth, lines on the surface of Mars, that they thought were canals, buildings that Martians had built. However, later with better telescopes and better technology, it was discovered that this was just an optical illusion, and many of the surface features on Mars had connected together to look like they were canals or other structures. And even in more recent times, with NASA's rovers and satellites, people back on Earth think that they've seen evidence of life on Mars. For example, this picture over here looks like a face on the surface of Mars. And truly, from that first picture, it does look like a face. But when a NASA satellite went closer, it was revealed that it actually looks like this here on the right, just a mountain. Then NASA rovers found this crater, which looks like a tadpole or a fish or some kind of marine life that we'd find here on Earth. However, when NASA satellites looked at this closer, it was revealed to be simply a crater filled with water and a small rivulet of water leaking out as a river. And my last example of this is this, which many people fancifully called a cannonball on the surface of Mars. In reality, this ball is only 5 millimeters wide and is just a form of rock that's common. So that brings us to, what are the current conditions on Mars? Could there really be life there? So as many people know, the surface of Mars is red because of all the iron in its soil that oxidizes upon contact with air. The average temperature on Mars is negative 60 degrees Celsius, and it can range anywhere from negative 200 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere on Mars is 100 times thinner than Earth because Mars doesn't have a magnetic field. And without the magnetic field, solar particles stripped away most of the Martian atmosphere. However, the amount of the atmosphere that is left is 95% carbon dioxide. That's much different from here on Earth, where our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. While the atmosphere is very thin on Mars, it still allows for certain weather features such as frequent dust storms, which many times cover the surface of the entire planet, obscuring all features such as those darker areas or the white poles from view. And another side effect of having no magnetic field is that there's many amounts of harmful radiation present on Mars. However, despite how extreme these conditions are, we've seen evidence on Earth that life can survive in extreme conditions. One example of such life are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These tiny, half-millimeter long organisms are able to survive in extreme cold, and recently could have been noticed to even survive in space, as a lander that crash landed on the moon was carrying tardigrades, and they could currently be there on the moon, still alive. Another study was done to see if a certain bacteria, these bacteria here, could survive on the surface of Mars. In these test tubes, there is water, these bacteria, and sand, and they were subjected to the same cold temperatures and temperature fluctuations that are present during a typical Mars day. And these bacteria were shown to survive. Their metabolism and growth conditions were slowed down very, very much during the cold periods. However, they nonetheless survived. However, Mars's conditions in the past could have been much more conducive to life. Billions of years ago, Mars used to be much like Earth. This image is an artist's rendition of what Mars may have looked like billions of years ago when it was covered with water. Years ago, the Martian atmosphere was thick enough to allow water to flow on the surface, as Mars still had its magnetic field. And rovers and satellites have found evidence of oceans, lakes, and rivers on the surface of Mars. However, all dried up. They've currently not directly detected water on Mars. Some indicators of water on Mars are these seasonal dark streaks that you see in this image. These dark streaks appear in many places around Mars, and they are signs of salty water flows. And there's also water below the carbon dioxide ice caps on Mars. These ice caps periodically melt over the summer to reveal the water ice below them. The Opportunity rover, which unfortunately is now inoperative on Mars, also discovered water-soaked rocks that show evidence that there had to be water on Mars sometime in the past. And we've also recently discovered that there's a frozen lake below the surface of Mars that's the size of California and Texas put together. This huge lake, scientists speculate, could actually be the site of life on Mars if it currently is there. However, as I said before, we have not directly discovered water there yet, meaning that rovers have not come into contact directly with this water. So that brings us to the ultimate question, of course. Is there life on Mars? We've seen many signs of life on Mars, but it's hard to be sure. The Curiosity rover discovered methane on Mars. Curiosity is the rover that's currently active on Mars. And methane is a byproduct of many biological processes. However, some skeptics do point out that methane can also be caused by volcanic processes and therefore could have nothing to do with life on Mars. Additionally, in meteorites that have fallen on Earth that have come from Mars, some of these meteorites have shown evidence of biological-like structures, as shown in this image. These look like bacteria. However, again, these structures could also have been caused by normal mineral processes. And it's very, very difficult to distinguish mineral processes from biological processes. And this quote by Carl Sagan sums this up pretty easily. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If we are to claim that we have found life on Mars or anywhere else in the solar system, it will take extraordinary evidence to prove that it is true. Things on Earth, such as when we find these same biological signatures on Earth, we immediately assume that they are caused by life because we have already witnessed that there is life on Earth. However, when we find the same evidence on Mars, we look deeper into it because it's possible that they were not caused by life. Since we don't already know that if there's life on Mars, it's harder for us to say if those pieces of evidence are caused by biology. NASA's new rover is launching this summer, the Perseverance rover. Up until recently, you may have heard of it as the Mars 2020 rover. This rover is the first rover to specifically go to Mars to look for signs of past life. Some of its main objectives are to explore its diverse landing site, which is a Jezero crater, which will be discussed further later. Assess the possibility of ancient habitability on Mars, and to gather rock and soil samples that could possibly be collected by a later mission and brought back to Earth for further analyzation. This rover should launch sometime between July and August. Of course, now that we've had this whole coronavirus come up, it's harder for them to proceed with the mission. But either way, they must launch within that time period, because if they do not, then Mars will be too far away for the rocket to make the trip. But regardless of when it launches, it will land on February 18th in 2021. Jezero crater, where the Perseverance rover is landing, is an extraordinary place. It's actually very, very similar to places on Earth. It's in this top image. You can see these channels that look like rivers. And this triangular area, which is a river delta, much similar to the bottom picture, which shows the Nile River Delta on Earth. Much like the Nile River Delta, A river has carried sediments and minerals to a lake bed, and this area is a prime spot to look for current or past life. Scientists have said that we could possibly find life on other planets within the next 10 to 20 years. And I think that's absolutely so exciting that we could discover new life within our lifetimes. It would completely change the way that we look at life, and it would change the future of humankind forever. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Anavi. We will go ahead with our second presenter of the day, Mr. Amritanshu Vajpayee, a scholar in physics optics with astronomy and astrophysics as a special subject, also public administration and computer science as well. As a polylinguist, trained science communicator, and coordinator of Ignited Minds WIPNET Club, he is dedicated to the pursuit of development of citizen scientists as a culture in the society. He has been chasing eclipses and studying meteorites since early days. And now, as an investigator and researcher for the pursuit of research work working on impact craters and meteorite analysis. He is also pursuing science writing, astrophotography, science documentary filmmaking as a hobby. He will today talk on astonishing meteors. Let's welcome Mr. Amritanshu Vajpayee ji to continue with his lecture sessions. Over to you, sir.
So thanks a lot, Shweta, and I hope that I am audible and visible to all. Now, since actually I am joining from a very narrowband network, so I shall be keeping off my video and would request you all to kindly look through my presentation of the screen so that to avoid any danger of losing the connection in the middle of a storm, I am actually connecting to you. So just wait for a second so that I can start presenting my screen. Sure. So welcome you all and thanks a lot, Shweta, first of all. And actually today I am welcoming you all to this astonishing world of meteors, meteorites and meteorites. And actually it's more of a theoretical talk, but since it's my research subject, but yes, I would like to guide you slowly and slyly into this theoretical topic in an interesting and a storytelling manner. So let's begin with a few frequently asked question. जैसे आप लोग जगह के हिसाब से देखते हैं, you might be seeing from the different locations where you belong to, टूटता हुआ तारा. So actually that टूटता हुआ तारा, the space rocks, whichever the name goes by the place. So these are a few frequently asked questions. What causes these meteorites? Why do meteor showers occur? The second, it comes, what actually is a meteoroid? Because these are a few technical terms which tend to confuse the people a lot. And what is a meteorite? And in the end, what can meteorites tell us about objects that are formed early in the history of the solar system? So we shall be undertaking these events slowly, one by one. So as you all can see over my presentable screen, there are a few pics from the different meteor showers that have been collected from the different sources of the sky and the planetaria across the world around the globe. So what's this bright flash of lightning streak across the sky that you people all are seeing? We call the objects that creates this brilliant effect by different names depending upon where it is. So let's get this straight. A meteor is a meteoroid actually. And what actually a meteorite shower is or meteorites are? Meteorites are the space rocks. Sorry, meteorites are the, I am talking about DS. Meteorites are what we call as the space rocks that range in the size from small dust grains to small asteroids. And this term actually applies when they are in the space. Most are the pieces of other larger bodies. These meteorites are the pieces of larger bodies that have been broken or blasted off. A few come from comets, others from asteroids, and some even come from moon and the other planets. Some meteorites are rocky, while others are metallic or combinations of rocks and metals. Now, when these meteorites, now I am taking you to the journey from this meteorite, the second question that is in front of your screen, to the question of meteors. When these meteorites enter Earth's atmosphere or any other planet like Mars or any other satellite, say moon, etc., at a very high speed, they burn up, and then they are given the nomenclature of meteors. This is also when we refer them with a famous name in our common talk known as the shooting stars. Sometimes meteors can even appear brighter than Venus, and that's the time when we call them the fireballs. You might be seeing over the news time and again the such and such fireball event has occurred at Russia or in Venezuela, etc. So it is actually these events that they refer to the fireballs. When a meteor comes brighter than that of the apparent brightness of Venus, and then they are known as fireballs. And you will be astonished, you people will be astonished to know that scientists have estimated that about 48.5 tons of meteoritic material falls on the earth every day. Just imagine 48.5 tons, 44,000 kilograms of meteoritic material falling on the earth each and every day. And as a matter of fact, it is distributed over the entire periphery of the earth, that we are left unhurt many a times. Now comes the last point. The last technical term before I expand my talk to the other things is meteorite. Now, a meteoroid was one that was orbiting the space. When it has come in the burning format, it has become a meteor. Now, when a meteorite survives its trip through the atmosphere after burning and hits the ground, then it is known as a meteorite. Meteorite. So a meteor is a meteorite or a particle broken off an asteroid or a comet orbiting the sun that burns up as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, creating the effect of a shooting star. And when these meteorites reach the Earth's surface without disintegrating, they are known as meteorites. Most of the pieces of comet dust and ice, when they reach Earth, they are no larger than a grain of rice. They are principally broken off asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, but sometimes, and interestingly, they can weigh as much as 60 tons, and we shall be seeing them also later. So several meteors per hour. Now coming back to this picture, now several meteors when per hour, they can be usually seen on a given night. When there are a lot more meteors, then that is known as the meteor shower. You can see over the screen, over a few pics, that is the right bottom left corner, you can see 5 to 6 streaks at a time, or over a long exposure when we try for the photography, then this comes and it is known as a meteor shower. Some meteor showers occur annually or at regular intervals as the Earth passes through the trail of dusty debris left by a comet or, in a few cases, asteroids. And one more point of info that I would like to give to you at this point of time is meteor showers. They are usually named after a star or a constellation that is close to where the meteors appear to originate in the sky. We shall be looking at these in detail a lot more time. So we have already gone through what is a meteor. It is a line of light in the sky caused by small particles of dust or a piece of space rock which enters the Earth's atmosphere and gets burned up. Now, we have already gone through these details or differences between a meteoroid, meteorite, and a meteor. As far as today's talk is concerned, we shall be emphasizing on meteors and meteorite. Point number 2 and point number 3. Point number 1 has got its own significance. We shall be seeing it in bits and pieces. Now, this is actually a meteor shower. You go to the second picture, and what you can see is the particles that are causing the meteor shower strike the Earth actually on nearly parallel paths. This is a reality. But what you are seeing in the second picture is they appear to diverge from a point. Just wait a second. This is the picture that actually I want to emphasize on. They are coming from a one particular point, and this is a technical aspect or the scientific aspect that I would like to bring your attention to. See, the source is same and they are coming from the same direction. So actually go to the figure number A. Still they seem to come to diverge from a point. And now you come to the picture number B, that is the downside of the picture, and that will overcome your apparent confusion that even after coming from a point and even after coming from a single source, from a single direction nearby a particular dust cloud that has been left, still they seem to diverge. Now your answer lies in condition number B. The divergence of the meteors as seen in picture number A is the same phenomena seen by a person. Now just imagine you are standing on a long straight highway. The road seems to diverge as it comes towards the observer. The ending point of the highway, you can compare it with the starting point of the meteor shower. And the point where you are standing on the highway, you can see that as far as that person is concerned, he can see that road is somewhat some sort of expanding in front of him. So in the similar manner, you are able to see the meteor showers also expanding in front of you. Now, this is somewhat technical and this is somewhat the major issue for today that I would like to discuss. Throughout the entire year, we are able to watch the meteor showers. These are a few prominent meteor showers that are visible for the entire year. And you might be very well be hearing in the news that Lyrids and Lyrid showers are yes picking up in at this period of time. And whatever the dates that I have mentioned over this platform, actually they are the tentative dates. They may increase or decrease, and these are the not exact dates. They actually are the dates of the peak of the meteor shower. So let's begin with the first shower, that is quadrantid shower. So quadrantid meteor shower is the first meteor shower. I would take you to the journey from January to December. The quadrantid meteor shower is the first major meteor shower of 2020, or you can say every year. This year, it took place from December 28 till January 12, and yes, the peak was very well in the range of 4th to 5th of January and early hours of January 4. Unlike other meteor showers, which tend to peak approximately 2 days, the quadrantid meteor shower has got a typical variety that it peaks for a few hours. Now, as far as the history is concerned, it was first spotted in 1825 by the Italian astronomer. As far as I remember the name, I suppose Antonio Brucalassi. Then astronomers suspect that the shower actually originates from the comet C1490Y1, and that has got a very long history of observation, say 500 years ago, by the Japanese, the Chinese, and the Korean astronomers. Now, actually, we can see when this meteor activity at its peak, we can approximately imagine to be seeing, say, 80 meteors per hour. That is a very decent sight with a meteor velocity of about 41 kilometers per second. Now imagine 80 meteors per hour coming at you with a speed of 41 kilometers per second. Isn't it a great spectacle? Now, one question: why? Behind everything, there is a logic. Why this shower is known as quadrantid shower? This quadrantid actually appear to radiate from an extinct constellation, Quadrans Muralis, which is now a part of Bootes constellation, and you can see not very much far from the Big Dipper, the Saptarishi as we call in India. So when you go to Saptarishi, you are able to spot the Bootes constellation, which on which stands the part of extinct constellation Quadrans Muralis, and there from that direction the quadrantis actually they come to our side. Because of this constellation's positions in the sky, the shower is often impossible to see in the southern hemisphere. But yes, since we are in the northern hemisphere, we are very lucky people to see these showers. Now, coming to the second meteor shower, which is going on right now, and it is still peaking. You can still have a chance if you have got the clear skies today. Unfortunately, I have not, as the storm is raging outside. So yesterday, but yes, our team was able to see a few showers. But fortunately, if you have got the clear skies, you have got the ample chance to see these Lyrid meteor showers till April 25th or 26th. Now, this Lyrid meteor showers, they take place annually between April 16 to 26th. And in 2020, as we all know, it has come to the peak between 21st and 23rd. Now, this Milky Way and the traces of meteor showers, they illuminate the sky when we have got the clear skies. And in this era of standing by distance of COVID-19, though it is not a very welcome phenomena, yes, we have got the clear skies. So sometimes if we are fortunate, we will be able to sight these lyrids also. Now, the importance is this particular star, though it is not so much prominent, but is visible both in northern and southern hemisphere. This offers the stargazer a chance to see up to 18 hours during its peak. Now, these lyrid meteors have got a peculiar thing also. While sighting, they are as bright as the stars again in the Big Dipper, or you can say Saptarishi, but some are much more intense and even brighter than Venus also. So they can be sighted very, very easily. And now, since we are in the new moon phase, it is to our advantage also. And these lyrid firewalls are very much famous because they cast shadows for a split second and leave behind them smoky debris trails that linger on for minutes and minutes. Now, the lyrid shower has got a very peculiar thing. Because of the ionized gases in the meteors, trail burns up and it enters the Earth's atmosphere, creating the glow which can be seen streaking across the sky. And they have got a very bright history of being sighted as last as 687 BC. Now, coming to one approaching meteor shower, it is not so much prominent, but yes, still it has got a few importance of its own. Eta Aquarids. As we all know, Eta Aquarids, it originates from the debris of the comet IP Halley, and the radiant it is found in the constellation Aquarius, and it has already been active since April 19. But because of lyrids, we have not been able to see the much detailed Eta Aquarids. But yes, it will be active till 28th of May, and you will be able to see 10 to 20 meteors per hour with a velocity of 66 kilometers per second. Now, one thing that I would like to bring all your points, that I have not discussed all the things in detail up till now, but there is one thing in common for all the three showers that I have discussed up till now. There is somewhat word known as comet, the debris of comet. So you should be clear by the fact that meteors come from the leftover comet particles and bits from broken asteroids. When comets come around the sun, they leave a dusty trail behind them. And every year, the Earth passes through these debris trails, which allows the bits to collide with our atmosphere, where they disintegrate to create fiery and colorful, yet interesting and yet beautiful streaks in the sky. So this Eta Aquarids is actually a phenomena of comet Halley, which creates one more shower that we shall be encountering in detail. Now, coming to one more, Delta Aquarids. The comet of the origin is unknown, but as far as the students of meteor studies, when we have suspected it to be 96P Macaulay comet, which can be a possible origin for Delta Aquarids, and they peak between July 12 to August 23, with the peak around 28th of July till 30th of July, and then again it is a 20 meteors per hour, meteor velocity of 25 miles per second, not so prominent. So these faint meteors are difficult to spot, and if there is a moon, then you will not be able to view them. But hopefully this year we shall be able to see, because moon may not be present at the time of Delta Aquarids. So if you are unable to view the Delta Aquarids during their peak, look for them again during the Perseids in August. Another meteor shower, and in combination of the Perseids intensity, you will be able to sight these showers. Now, coming to one of the most important and one of the most beautiful showers that we see in India, the Perseid meteor shower. The Perseids actually they peak in the month of 14th July till 24th of August, with a peak ranging between 9th of August till 15th of August. This year, hopefully, it is in the zone of say 11 to 13th of August. With the comet, the origin comet is 109P, which is known as, in normal language, known as Swift Turtle. And now, at the most activity, though this table shows 50 expected hours, 50 meteors per hour, but when at its maximum, it can shoot up to 100 meteors per hour, ranging with a speed of 59 kilometers per second. Now, these Perseids are best known for their fireballs. Now, as we have already discussed, the fireballs with intensity greater than that of Venus, they are larger explosions of light and color that can persist longer than an average meteor streak. And this is due to the fact that fireballs originate from larger particles of cometary material, and they are brighter. And for the students of astronomy, their apparent magnitudes are even greater than -3. So this is a very, very, you can say, a prominent meteor shower. And thanks to the origin or the name, this shower appears to originate within the star constellation Perseus. Hence, the shower's name comes. And it occurs when the Earth, as we know, passes through the debris stream occupying the orbit of comet Swift-Tuttle. Now, again, coming to the Draconites, the Draconite is again a meteor shower which graces our skies during a short window from October 6th to 10th, with a peak, say, between 8th and 9th. And in the end, it is, you can say, the origin is comet Giacobini-Zinner and 21P in astronomical terms. And this comet takes about, you can say, 6.6 years to make a single revolution around the sun. So the best chance to see the shower, it is visible in the northern hemisphere. And when we look for the constellations, brightest stars, L-Tenin and Rastaman, then if we are able to sight these two stars in the sky, yes, very well, we will be able to see these Draconite showers. Now, coming to another very peculiar showers, very famous showers in India, again, second creation of comet Halley. Now, this is a very interesting fact that comet Halley, it creates two types of showers, meteor showers. Number one, we have already seen Eta Aquarids, that we will be able to see hopefully in the month of May as these lyrids go down. And then again, they will be peaking around in the month of October. Say that is Banpi Halley between October 2nd to November 7th. The peak is around, you can say, the Diwali period. So with much firecrackers, hopefully we will be able to see the Orionids also because of the clear skies. And this year the peak is roughly between October 18th to October 22nd. And now, without going into the technical details, why this meteor shower has been given the nomenclature of Orionid? It is because it appears to radiate from the constellation Orion. So Orion, as we all know in Hindi, we call it Mrigashira Nakshatra, and Orion appears like a hunter, as we have already studied in our class 6 to class 8 textbooks. Very easy to cite. So Orionids or Orionids, whichever the pronunciation you may take, you can easily cite by citing the Orion, and one of the brightest and the best known constellations of the sky, and it contains 10 brightest stars in the sky, Regal and Betelgeuse. The Betelgeuse has also been famous of late because of its dimming cycle, and there have been speculations whether it is going to become a supernova or all, but it is a different, you can say, a discussion altogether. So Orion, this belt is made up of 3 bright stars. They come together close in a very straight line about 1500 light years from us, and so we can see them in the star maps facing the Taurus, the bull, the Vrishab Rashi, as we all know. So we will be easily able to see the sky, but only problem with this meteor is that approximately 15 meteor per hour count is there, though the speed is high, 66 kilometers. But yes, if we are able to gaze the sky for say 1 hour or so, and we maintain our cool and calm, we will be very well able to see the Orionids also. Now, coming to the Leonids, this is the second last shower that we see very well in India, and especially in the North India. It is because afterwards the foggy weather and the winter starts. So again, a very famous comet Tempel-Tuttle, which has been of late, you can say, under talk for a variety of reasons, 55P we can call it. So, and Leonid, as we know, the constellation, it comes from Leo, Singh Rashi. You just spot inside the Singh Rashi, and between November 6th to November 30, with the peak around November 15 to November 18, and then you may see Singh, or the mouth of the lion or the Leo, sending jet streams or sparks of 15 meteors per hour. But the interesting thing is the speed is amongst the highest with 71 kilometers. And then this Leonid is sometimes very much notoriously famous for sending very bright streams, say 1000 meteors per hour, and that was visible or known as Leonid storm in 1966. And the last Leonid meteor storm, it took place in 2002, and hopefully we shall very soon be able to see another Leonid storm, with a hope that it does not hurt anybody. Now, the last, a beautiful shower, but very rarely visible in North India because it peaks around December. And as a matter of fact, for the South Indian audience joining us today, you can very well spot and watch it between December 4th to December 17th. And this year, the peak again is around December 10 to 12. And as goes the name Geminids, the constellation is Gemini. And the best, the beautiful form is it has expected meteor activity count of 120 meteors per hour when it is at its maximum. So this is what that actually I wanted to convey regarding the Geminids. The only thing that and one more information, you can see there is a double asterisk mark over Geminids, and the rest of the other meteor showers, they have got a comet origin, but Geminids, they are unique in them because they have got an asteroid origin. So this is in total a different matter of discussion regarding the asteroid origin or the that is comet origin. But yes, Geminids have got a different, all total a different origin in comparison to the other meteor showers. Now, this is what that actually I wanted to tell you in the beginning. Most of the meteor showers, they're usually named for the constellation from which they radiant. Radiant means that is the streaking streams, they lie at the peak of the shower. When you are seeing the Perseid at its peak, they tend to come from the constellation Perseus. Leonid at its peak, they tend to eject from the constellation Leo. Geminids, they tend to eject from the constellation Gemini. It is because our elderly people, the ancient people, they used to observe the. Now, this is actually that what I wanted to show you, that you all people can visualize from the point. Now, the thing is, the Earth is orbiting around the sun, and this is what the debris particles that I was actually talking about. These are the cluster of particles, and when left from the nose of the comet or from the asteroid belt or so, whichever come into the path of the Earth, and whenever the Earth crosses their path while revolving around the sun at a particular instant of time in its revolution period, then we are very much able to see the meteorites or the meteor showers. Now, this is what that actually I wanted to give you a feel of the meteorites. Now, what we can see on the left is actually there are different types of meteorites that we are able to see in our experiences, but broadly we can classify them as iron meteorite and stony meteorite. And you remember, the meteorites are the particles that we are very well able to collect. Now, this left one that you are able to see over your screen is an iron meteorite from a very famous meteor man known as Robert Higgs. And so it is actually a collection from Robert Higgs, and it is an iron meteorite. And the right one, it is a type of a stony meteorite. And people will be astounded to know that 95% of the things that we are able to collect us between as a meteorite students, 95% of the stones are the meteorite showers. 90% of the they are meteorite showers. And so the largest meteorite ever found, I'm sure, the largest meteorite that we have ever found is Hobah meteorite, for your knowledge. And you all people will be excited to know that how much it weighed. It was about 65 tons in Namibia. So just imagine a 65-ton rock falling directly from the atmosphere into your place, and you are able to see it, and the impact that you are able, that 65-ton has been able to create. And as we all know, as I have already given you a hint, iron meteorite and stone meteorite. So stony meteorites, they turn to crumble when they come and they interact with the atmosphere, different layers of the atmosphere of the Earth. But the iron meteorites, they seldom break down. And so that 65-ton of Namibia actually was an iron meteorite, the Hobah meteorite. And so it did not break down in the course of interacting with the atmosphere. Now comes an interesting meteorite, and you might be smiling or laughing. A famous meteorite which did a huge business in the US, and the US audience might very well know that what I am actually talking about. Now you can see this actually is a meteorite, and children are sleeping or taking rest over this meteorite. And actually it is a 14-ton iron, the largest meteorite that is ever found in US. And you will be very much you can say astounded by the fact that it was discovered by a farmer and his son. And what they did was actually, and you just keep control over your laughter, that they dragged that meteorite out of their field, say for about half a mile or so, into their home. And then in 1902 they charged the people 25 cents to view it, and they made huge amount of money by making the people rest over that meteorite, by making the people see that meteorite. So these also have been, you can say, as a matter of fact, the creations and the creativities of the people, the business opportunities that could be created. But hopefully India has not been a witness to such huge falls, and you can imagine in such a crowded nation, if 14-ton or 65-ton falls, what could be the impact? Now, talking to the impact, I am taking you to the world of impact craters. This actually what we really are interested in. The above one, when a huge meteorite falls, now this is what it creates. The first picture which you are seeing all over your screen is a 120 large meteorite. Out of those 120 large meteorite craters that have been found on the earth, you can see this is one of the pictures. And just imagine in the antiquity period what an impact that it had made. If you are able to browse over to the top right corner of your screen, over the first picture, actually there is a hotel and there is a road by the side of the meteor, and you can just imagine the depth of the meteorite that has fallen and the crater that it has created. And below we can see a 10-meter wide crater that was formed in Russia in 1990 by a 1500 kilogram iron meteorite. And mind you, the most of the impact craters of the world, they are actually created by the meteorites. And India has also been a witness to a few famous meteorites, of which we have been studying of late. As far as my particular field is concerned, we have uh, gone and collected the samples from the famous Lonar crater. Now, the meteorites that are that fall to the earth. Now, there was one question that I raised in the beginning. Now, that what these meteorites actually they tell us about the creation. It is because the meteorites that fall to the earth, they represent some of the original diverse materials that formed planets billions of years ago. So, by studying meteorites, we can actually learn about the early conditions and processes in the solar system's history. Now, what we can infer is the age, the composition of different planetary building blocks, and the temperatures achieved at the surfaces and the interiors of the asteroids. And also, not to forget, the degrees to which the materials were shocked by the impacts in the past. So meteorites may resemble like earth rocks, but if you are going to see a meteorite, how you are going to feel it in your hand? And recently there were news over Ghaziabad having a meteorite fall, and the specimens were sent to ISC Bangalore and all. So even a layman, even you, even I, anybody and everybody can identify the preliminary features of a meteorite. It will surely have a burnt exterior that can appear shiny. This fusion crust, it will form as a meteorite's outer surface, and it shall melt while passing through the atmosphere. So whether it is iron or stony iron, one of the important characteristics is it will be preserved in the stony form or the iron stony form or the iron form with a burnt exterior, because after interacting with the atmosphere for long. So now I hope that we have already gone through a long journey, and I would like to end up the talk by this curious case of disappearance of the dinosaurs. 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs became extinct. In fact, we can all say, as far as the scientific research is concerned, nearly 75% of all the species on Earth became extinct during the same short time period, by given the statistics of the geologists as of now. So the reason for this mass extinction has been debated by the scientists for some time, and there have been several catastrophe hypotheses causing for an extinction, and a possible meteorite impact is also not ruled out as far as the meteor study people are concerned from my field. So what you are able to see over your screen is the famous Chicxulub crater of the Yucatan coast of Mexico, and it measures about 180 to 300 kilometers across. You can see, imagine, it measures 180 to 300 kilometers across, making it one of the largest craters formed in the inner solar system during the last 4 billion years. It is not completely visible from the above, but it was detected by measuring slight variations in Earth's gravitational pull. Measurements made were originally for the oil exploration, and that resulted in a superb discovery. So, after in the course of oil discovery, there were fossil records that came out, And when the scientists studied those fossil records, they actually turned out to be the fossil remains of the dinosaurs. Now, such a large crater, huge crater, and when the analogies were made across all over the world, such sort of craters were extended along the similar latitude. If you turn your globe around the almost say a difference of 5 to 10 degrees north and south of the same latitude where this Chicxulub crater is being found, then you will very well be able to see a range of meteor impact craters and the fossil remains of the dinosaurs. Recently, you might have heard in the news over the program that fossil remains were excavated by the German scientists near Mata Nomad of Gujarat also. That actually very well falls in this range. And so one of these asteroid hypothesis test is that is how long the clay layer of this over these meteorite craters were formed, and if we are able to decipher if it happened 65 million years ago, and there are students of geology amongst this audience today, so this theory of late has become more and more accepted, that it is because of this meteorite impact that yes, we have been able to identify and we have been able to decipher the way in which the dinosaurs became extinct. And with this, I hope that we come to the end of a long talk. And I hope that I have taken you to a journey of meteorites from my part. And I was just trying maximum to resist myself from going to the technical details. And I hope that any of the doubts and any of the questions and queries, you can kindly ping up in the chat. And thanks a lot for the Sky Foundation and EduSTEM for giving me this opportunity to present this small yet boring yet interesting talk to all of you. Over to Sky Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vajpayee, for such an enlightening talk with us. To be very honest, I really enjoyed it and hoping the same from all our participants. From his talk today, I get to know the difference between the comet, meteors, meteoroids, and meteoroids. And he took us in a long journey from the history of dinosaurs to the craters. It really like what we are imagining in the history or in our school days. It really exists in the reality. So I really thank to Mr. Bajpayee for his such an interesting talk. And it's not an end of this astronomy series here. So let us take a brief note what we are going to discuss in the third and the last session. Like astronomy used to be a somewhat expensive hobby once upon a time. For that, we have to require a telescope and other equipments. However, that's not the case anymore. Our ancestors viewed the starry sky every night. In their minds and imagination, they formed stars into a unique object that we now call constellations. They also told the stories of how these constellations came to be. So, thanks to the today's science and technology, our scientists, our astronomers, we are able to see the real images of stars, planets, and other celestial objects in space. We have even sent space mission to discover the mysteries of outer world, as our first speaker, Miss Anavi, told us that we have sent a rover to a Mars. So it's a very famous English Hindi proverb written by Iqbal, सितारों से आगे जहां और भी हैं. So definitely there is a lot of still to explore in the universe, the exciting universe. From this, I would like to invite our third and last speaker, Mr. Sumit Kumar Srivastav. So let me give a brief introduction about him. So he is a scientific officer of Indira Gandhi Planetarium, Council of Science and Technology, UP, Uttar Pradesh. So he has more than a 13-year experience of handling telescope and organizing astronomical outreach events. A research scholar in astronomy, he is the mentor of Astronomy Club of Uttar Pradesh Amateur Astronomers Club. Since 2011, to which currently 900 plus active members are associated, and they also train under his guidance. So he is also a lifetime member of Awadh Vigyan Bharati Uttar Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh Amateur Astronomers Club, and also the Indian Science Congress. So not taking too much time from my end, I would like to invite Mr. Sumit Kumar Srivastav, And on the behalf of Sky Foundation, I really like to thank to you, all the participants who still are connected and really enjoy the talk. So there is a feedback form in the chat box. Please fill it by the time you are by the time it ended the session. So over to Sumit Kumar Srivastav. Welcome. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Sumit Kumar Srivastav. I am scientific officer at Indira Gandhi Planetarium, Lucknow, and I am working for astronomy from 2006. Um, I would like to thank Sky Foundation, EduSTEM Initiative, SkyAct, Women-led Science, and Ignited Minds for providing me the opportunity on their platform to present myself and my with my PPT. And we all know that the world is going through the pandemic COVID-19. Focus us to lock down ourselves for safety in this lockdown period. Everyone is busy in doing something creative, innovative, whatever they like, just as singing, cooking, and painting, whatever they like. It is commonly seen that people had very keen interest in night sky observation, but they don't know from where they should start learning in observing night sky. How can they recognize the stars, planets, man-made satellites, meteors, constellations? And they like the night sky gazing. They like the astronomical events such as occultation, eclipses, transits, and many others. But again, when night sky attracts them, they don't know from where they should start to recognize them. For this purpose, I prepare a PPT for everyone, with the help of which they can easily recognize the objects in night sky, so that in this lockdown period, Sky started the astronomical delight series, in which we provide all the information and event information of night sky of that month. First, we start from April 2020. We are in last week of April 2020, so we prepare a PPT. I prepare a PPT for the objects that can be seen in April 2020. So we focus on events and objects that we can easily recognize in night sky of April 2020. Okay, so I am presenting my PPT. So I am connecting it. Please pin the second one which I am connecting.
Okay, so Mr. Sumit, yeah, please connect your presentation till the time. Like everyone who is connected with us, all the participants, I would like to request, please pin the presentation point so that you are able to see the presentation.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, Mr. Sumit, we are able to see your screen. You can continue.
Okay. I am connecting my screen from laptop. Please look at my presentation. Pin that so that you can see the presentation. This is my presentation. Feel the joy night sky gazing with bright stars, constellation, planets, International Space Station flyby or above the head, and meteor stars in moonless nights. I promise all of you that you would like it and you will enjoy the night sky watching in April. This is our first slide of my presentation. The sky of last week of April 2020. When you go outside on your rooftop or your balcony, then you can see some planets, some stars, and a string triangle, which you can easily recognize when you go through this PPT. Let's start with planets. In the April 2020, we have the opportunity to observe the Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. We had the opportunity to observe the Lyraid meteor shower, and another meteor shower for the maximum. Another meteor shower that we can see is Scorpids. It is on its maximum on 28th of February. And if you are the astronomy lover, then you can also enjoy the International Space Station ISS flyby, and it depends upon your location for exact timing at your place. At what timing it is visible from your place, you have to go to the website spotthestation.nasa.gov for exact information. There are many mobile applications from where you can easily spot the ISS. And I will tell you about 10 to 11 stars, which you can see the light polluted sky also, because they are so bright. All of them are alpha or beta stars of their constellation. Alpha beta means they are either the first brightest star or second brightest star in their constellation. As we know that the light pollution affects too much in stargazing, light pollution is a in the places where the light pollution, we are not able to see the stars which have the dim light. Actually, the places where the light pollution, we are able only to see 10 to 100 stars and objects in the night sky. But if you go through the night dark side, then you can see the thousands of bright objects in the sky. And some of the stars are Betelgeuse, Procyon, Regal, Capella, Aldebaran, Sirius, Regulus, Polaris, and Vega. And I would conclude it with this is a map. You can easily get it from anywhere. Hello.
There might be some technical issue,
Hello?
like with your voice is not properly coming. Yeah, you are audible. You are audible.
Hello?
You are good to go. Yeah, you are good to go.
Carry on, Sumit ji.
Carry on. You are Please carry on.
This is please look at the screen. This is the April 2020 last week sky map over Lucknow, which I get from the Stellarium software. If you want to draw your own sky map, please send us the query to admin@skyfoundation.org, or you can own your sky map from other website also, or some applications such as Stellarium is a very good software. It is easy to use, and its interface is user friendly. And if you have the sky map of any month, then you can easily recognize the constellation and their stars, and also it will help you to get the path of the moon and other things. Let's start from the planets. When we go outside on our rooftop and balconies, our west sky fully illuminated by bright stars such as Aldebaran, Sirius, in April 2020. Just after this presentation, when you go outside, then you can see that your west direction is fully illuminated by the bright stars and objects. We are not going in detail for every object, because our prime motto here is to recognize the objects in the sky. And I request you all that start looking upward in night sky after the presentation. Within 3 days, I promise, within 3 days you start learning more complicated things than only recognizing planets and bright objects. And first we start from Venus. Okay, Venus. When you look towards the west direction, you get a brightest body. You get a brightest body illuminating in night sky. It is a Venus, and since it is known as a evening star, this is a planet, and point for other stars to recognize. Please look at the screen. At the left side, I pick the picture from a Stellarium software. I take a screenshot from there, in which you can easily see the directions east, west, north, south, and northeast, northwest, southwest, and southeast. You can see the Venus. I have pointed it on a screen. You can see the Venus just above the west. You can see the Venus in only in evening or before the sunrise. That means dawn. So it is known as a morning star and evening star. In April 2020, last week of April 2020, you can see the Venus in the evenings of April 2020. Throughout the April, Venus prominently get their space in the sky. So If you don't able to recognize them, then April 26 is for you. At April 2026, the angular distance between Moon and Venus remained only 6.6 degree. That means the distance between the distance between them, which you are seeing, is only 6.6 degree. At this point, anyone can easily recognize Venus in night sky. If not, then 26 night is for them. That means you can easily recognize them for taking the Moon as a reference point. You are looking for a moon, and near about the moon, the brightest body in the sky after the moon is a Venus. If you are looking if you're looking in a moonless night, then the west direction is Venus. You can recognize Venus with the help of crescent moon. Using up and left of the moon, you can easily see the Venus in the blue sky. It will be tiny to be sure, but you should see simmering bright Venus. On April 26, 27, I took 2 dates. That means the late night of 26 and the dawn of 27. The Venus will achieve magnitude minus 4.73. Nowadays, the magnitude of Venus is minus 4.72. So on that day, the cloud-covered planet will present a crescent shape, not unlike Moon between new and first quarter. It is very important because the persons who have the 20/20 eyesight, they can if they have the dark place to night sky observation, they can easily see the face through the unaided eye. Or other if you have any tiny telescope, then you can easily see the crescent face of the Venus. When you see the crescent face, then you easily recognize that it is not a star, this is a planet which shows its phase. It's best timing to observe the Venus from sunset to nearly 9 to 9:30 p.m. The other 3 planets are Mars, Saturn, and Venus. Look at the slide. They all 3 in a straight line, and I also give the rising time of the planets in slide. 23, 24, 25 to 30th April, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. Throughout, I have given the rising time, and from that from the rising planet means they are just coming above the horizon. Mars, Saturn, Jupiter are in line in this month from starting of the month, so one can easily recognize them. If you are early riser, then you have an opportunity to view them in with unaided eye. Again, I am saying that we are here. We are going outside to recognize the objects. We recognize the objects where we have to see for recognizing the planets, and where we have to see for recognizing the stars. And colors of them depends upon the location. What are the color you are seeing the planets? It depends upon the location and the pollution level of your location. But still, the color of Jupiter is bright white. Saturn looks like a reddish with whitish tone, and red planet Mars obviously looks like a red dot. Near about 2 a.m. in night, each of them are above horizon. That means from 2 a.m. in every night, you can easily catch them from 2 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. near about. Now again, you had a presentation on meteor shower. Then I'm not going in a detail, but I just want to tell you that there are 2 meteor showers in April month. One is a Lyrids meteor shower, and other visible meteor shower is Alpha Scorpids. Eta Puppets is not visible at our location in India. So Lyrids, the maximum, the peak of Lyrids was on 22nd April. That means yesterday. But you can easily catch the some of meteors from 20 till 26th, and you can get the Alpha Scorpids, peak of Alpha Scorpids on 28th April. On peak Alpha Scorpids, you get the maximum meteors per hour is 5 meteors per hour, and the marking star is Antares. and how you can get, how would you how you recognize the Antares. I will show you in another slides. The Alpha Scorpioid's direction is southeast, and the Lyrit's direction is northeast. The marking star for Lyrit's is Vega. Yesterday we observed, we pointed our eyes on Vega, and then we can easily recognize we can easily catch the Lyrit's meteor shower. And the Alpha is for Alpha Scorpius. We have to focus our eyes towards the Antares and in southeast direction. Then we can easily get the Alpha Scorpius on 28th April. There is another meteor shower, Eta Aquarids, that Amritashu Vajpayee had told you. But the peak of Eta Aquarids will come in May, 6th of May. So now we come on stars. The most prominent thing which we can see and observe in night sky, and it is sometimes it is very difficult to recognize which is star and which is planet. But if you look up the sky continuously for 3 days, then you can easily recognize every object with the help of sky map, with the help of some softwares, with the help of mobile applications. But after 3 days you don't need them. You easily recognize the stars and others. First of all, we start from Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is a very famous star because it is easily recognizable in night sky. It is the 10th brightest star in night sky and brightest star of constellation Orion. That Amritashu Vajpayee told about Orion that it is also known as a Mrag Shikha Tara Mandal, and in Hindi the Betelgeuse is also known as the Adra Tara. The color of Betelgeuse is red. I have more details of Betelgeuse, but again our object is to recognize which object the star or what is the name of that star. So when you go outside and look up the southwest direction, west and south, between the southwest and west direction, you can easily get the Betelgeuse and the famous Orion constellation, in which 7 stars are prominently you can observe. And the second star is Regal. Betelgeuse is the first star that is Alpha Orion. That means it is the brightest star of the Orion constellation, and the Regal is the second brightest star of constellation Orion. Its color in blue and white you can easily recognize because it is below the belt of Orion. When you see the Orion constellation, you can easily get the 3 stars between four quadrilateral stars. And below this is known as the Orion belt, and below the belt you can easily get the Regal. In Hindi it is also known as a Rajanya Tara, and the third star is known as the third star is Capella. It is also known as a goat star. Kepler is the brightest star of Auriga constellation. You can look at the screen. You can look at the screen on picture that on right side of the Orion you can easily get the Auriga constellation, and the brightest star of the Auriga constellation is Capella. I again say that the marking of constellation is not visible in night sky for amateurs. It is just for understanding purpose. And you can see the Capella and other stars are visible or not. It depends. It totally depends upon your location. So Capella is also known as a goat star. It is the brightest star of constellation Auriga, seen above the Venus. When you see the Venus, then it is above the Venus at right side and northwest direction, and it is the 6th brightest star in night sky. It is also known as a Brahma Hriday Tara of Brahma constellation. That means in Hindi, Auriga constellation is also known as a Brahma constellation, and the Capella is also known as a Brahma Hriday Tara. The next star which we get in west night sky is Aldebaran, the brightest star of Taurus constellation. Taurus is nothing. It is also no, it is also a zodiac constellation. In Hindi, it is known as a Vrash Tara Mandal, and can be seen just below the Venus in west direction. When you when we are on slide of Venus, then I said that. We took the Venus as a reference point for recognizing other stars. Then the Betelgeuse, Regal, Capella, Aldebaran, we can easily recognize if we recognize the Venus. Just below the Venus, you can see just below the Venus there is a star which is very bright. It is a Aldebaran, it is a Aldebaran star, and in a Taurus constellation. It is also known as a Rohini Tara. It is also known as a Rohini Tara of Vrash Tara Mandal. Now, next slide. Another star which took all the show, that is Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star of Canis Major, and can be seen in southwest direction above the horizon, white in color, and also known as a dog star. Or in Hindi, it is known as a Mrag Vyad Tara or Lubdak Tara. Canis Major, Canis Minor, and Betelgeuse, Orion. Canis Minor, and Orion has some stories behind their names. But here we took only what is the name of brightest star of any constellation, and is it visible from your location or not. Sirius is a very bright star, and it is visible from any location. However, it is light polluted. And another star is Procyon, brightest star of Canis Minor constellation, can be seen high above the Sirius, white in color. If you see, there are three stars: Procyon, Sirius, and Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse in last slide. You can see in a slide Procyon, Sirius, and Betelgeuse. They made a triangle. The Betelgeuse, Procyon, Sirius make a triangle. It is known as a winter triangle. It can be seen in each direction after sunset in winters. When you can see them in each direction after sunset, then you can easily say that it is a winter. And again, we can at next slide we had a star named as a Polaris or pole star. In northern hemisphere, the Polaris is a pole star, and it is the brightest star of Ursa Major constellation. Ursa Major constellation pole star is very famous in our Hindu mythology. In Hindi, it is known as a Dhruv Tara of Saptrishi Tara Mandal. Saptrishi Tara Mandal has 7 stars, and Polaris is the brightest star in this constellation, in this Saptrishi Tara Mandal. Polar coordinates on which the maximum of telescopes high accuracy and high efficiency telescopes are works on polar coordinates, and polar coordinates are fully dependent on latitude of the polar stars, and the latitude of the place decide the latitude of the pole star decide the latitude of that place. Whenever you start observing night sky with any telescope, any robotic telescope, you have to find Polaris first, and the Polaris and or pole star will work for you as a reference point for getting objects in night sky. Now again, in next slide, we have a bright star named as a Vega. It is the brightest star of constellation Lyra, and it is very you all gone through this star yesterday, because the reference point to observe Lyraid's meteor shower, it is a Vega, the reference point of Lyraid's meteor shower, because Lyraid's the meteor shower of Lyraid, you can, if you are not able to observe throughout the Lyra constellation, but the Vega is so prominent that you can easily see in light polluted cities also. And after sunset near about 9 p.m. in northeast direction, you can easily see near the horizon the Vega. In Hindi, it is also known as the Abhijit Tara. Abhijit Tara, and night goes on, the Vega comes upward, and you easily see the lyrics Meteosha near which starts from that reference point. And next slide. Okay. Now another bright object is a Regulus. When you see the west direction, the Regulus is also Regulus is also there, but above the Procyon and Cirrus. And as night passes, the Regulus goes at west direction. That means if you go early in evening, then you can easily recognize Regulus in west direction. And it is a brightest star of constellation Leo, and Leo is again known as the Singh Tara Mandal. That is also it is also a zodiac constellation. And in Hindi, the Regulus star is also known as a Magha Tara of Singh Tara Mandal. It can be seen near the zenith, but in between west and southwest direction. Near the zenith means when the Procyon, Cirrus, and Betelgeuse, Venus are observable. Then you have to see the Regulus near the zenith, and but in west direction. Then you can easily recognize the Regulus. For getting the Regulus, you have to see the Procyon or Spica or Aldebaran. Arcturus. So now the next our two stars are Spica and Arcturus. Spica is the brightest star of constellation Virgo, and the Virgo constellation has a quality that it always put the Leo constellation in its best. In Hindi, it is known as the Chitra Tara of Kanya Tara Mandal. Spica is known as a Chitra Tara, and the Virgo constellation is known as the Kanya Tara Mandal. It is also a zodiac constellation. The Spica looks blue in a color. It can be seen on higher in nights. Near the zenith, can be recognized by the Regulus. If you able to get the location of Regulus, then you can easily recognize the Regulus, Spica, and Arcturus, because they three made the spring triangle. And Arcturus are the brightest star of constellation Bootes. It is also known as Swati Tara of Gwala Tara Mandal. That means Bootes is known as a Gwala Tara Mandal in Hindi, and the Arcturus is known as a Swati Tara of Swati Tara. It can be seen high in night sky northwest direction. Again, I want to say that if you are able to watch the Regulus, for getting the Regulus, you have to see the west sky in where you get the Venus. Above the Venus, you can easily recognize the Betelgeuse, Regal, Cirrus, Procyon in southwest. Then above them, near the horizon, near the zenith, you get the Regulus, with Regulus you get the Spica and Arcturus. And it's about the spring triangle. Spring triangle are made up by Arcturus, Spica, and Regulus, and it can be seen in each direction on sunset. As soon as the sunset sunsets, the three stars start getting getting above the horizon, and made the spring triangle. Till then, these spring triangle looks in each direction in at sunset. Then it is a spring season. Now our next slide. It is a ISS flyby. It is very coincidence that Lucknow has a chance to see the ISS flyby tomorrow in morning. But always check. But the but the timing for every location is different, because the ISS timing for Lucknow is valid near about in 80 kilometer radius. 80 kilometer radius in 80 kilometer radius near at the center of Lucknow. If you want to know the ISS sighting in any month above your location, you have to check the spot.nation.nasa.gov. It is a very authentic site. It is directly governed by NASA. So, or if you have any problem, yeah, or if you want to know any ISS sighting in any month above your location, write a mail to Sky Foundation. Then they will respond you. ISS look like a fast moving star in a night sky, but the speed of aeroplane is near 980 kilometers per hour, while the speed of ISS is 28 times, near about 28,000 kilometers per hour. The image which I have taken here is taken from the spot.nation.nasa.gov, and the all the pics which I am showing, which I have shown here, are taken from Stellium software. It is a free software. You can easily download it for further help, and you can use it. It is user friendly. It has a user friendly interface. Thank you.
Okay.
If there is any question, then you can come on chat box. I will send the PPT to Sky Foundation. Then you can get the PPT if you need. Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mr. Sumit. Thanks for such a wonderful talk. For this talk, we get to know more about stars, what we need to see in the night sky. Almost we have a lot of participants here. I hope didn't know about it. What to see in the night sky, as so many stars. Due to pandemic COVID-19 or the lockdown period, we are able to now get it all thanks to the less pollution. So we are able to witness to grace the opportunity to we can see a lot of stars in the sky. So thanks a lot for such a wonderful talk. And from my words, I would like to invite Miss Archika for saying some words, as she is the co-founder of EduSTEM initiative, and it's a collaborative effect that we can we took a series in front of you as a form of astronomy delights. So it's a collaborative effect of Sky Foundation and EduSTEM initiative. So please welcome Archika Dogra for some few words. Thank you.
Definitely, yes. So I'm, as mentioned, the co-founder of the EduSTEM initiative, which is an international youth-run project bringing STEM education opportunities to youths of various backgrounds. We currently operate in 7 countries and 20 locations, and we love to hold events like these, which are really encouraging, informative, and engaging for students who love science and engineering.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Archika, for your words. Now over to you, Mr. Amritanshu.
Now, so actually, before we wind up the talk, actually, I had a call in between by Dr. Mrityunjay Khadak, who had joined us directly from Hyderabad, and he wanted to know a few points regarding the he made me note down 3 points actually regarding the Comet Atlas, and then he had a query, an interesting query from a doctor, actually a surgeon, regarding the energy equivalent of the strikes of a meteorite, and a few curious cases if we have been hit by a meteorite or so. So regarding as far as Comet Atlas is concerned, we were expecting to see the Comet Atlas within the range of the observation by May 5th. But unfortunately, that comet has disintegrated. And as far as the current knowledge is concerned, hopefully in the near future, we might be having a few more meteor showers from the remains of the Comet Atlas. Now, coming to the second interesting question that he has raised is that regarding the energy equivalent, that is, how can the dinosaurs die as of sort? So actually, it has been estimated, if you all can hear me, that it has been estimated that a meteorite which is larger than 1 kilometer in diameter, it strikes the earth every 3 or 4 million years. Now, and one more caution, that we have not been struck by a meteorite of that much amount by billion of years. So be careful. So on the average, we are being hit by a huge meteorite more than 1 kilometer in every 3 or 4 million years. So a 1 kilometer meteorite actually, 1 kilometer diameter meteorite actually acts for all of us equal to a 5,000 megaton bomb that would produce a crater of say about 10 kilometers in diameter. And this is an hypothesis. that I was talking about Chicxulub crater, 300 kilometer or 180 kilometer diameter. So you can imagine how much amount of energy would have been released. And when we can analyze the fossils, so this hypothesis was put in the year 1980. I am not remembering the year exactly. That such a meteorite strike was responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. And I would like to add that you remember one crater that I had shown in my PowerPoint presentation, where people were standing in a 10-kilometer diameter crater, 10 diameter crater was being created. That crater actually, the 10-meter diameter crater was there. That crater actually was an iron meteorite that was about 1 meter across. And you can just imagine 10-meter diameter, and the energy impact when it was calculated with the sophisticated instruments, it was equal to 1.5 tons of trinitrotoluene TNT. See, imagine 10-meter wide crater giving an energy impact of 1.5 tons of TNT. You just imagine how much energy impact that 300 kilometer crater would have been given, and that is why dinosaurs, they would have almost dissolved into an oblivion. Now, the last point, that any chances of being hit by meteorite, yes, there have been reported incidents, especially in Russia and America also. Because of a few geological characteristics, India is not so much prone to so much fireballs. That is another point of discussion. So one event happened in 1908, and in 1992 also the events were reported where people got injured and their property also suffered. So I hope that these are the three questions that were really pointed out to me. If any question, then over to you, Swapnil, to guide the other speakers out. Because I have been seeing in the chat, there have been a few questions regarding the presence of life apart from Mars.
Please let me check. Let me go through the chat box again. So I guess all the answer has already given in the chat box itself. So I hope don't, if anyone has a question, kindly put it on the admin@skyfoundation.org, and we will surely reply you. And for this reverse, I would like to bind up. And so over to you,
So,
Mr. Amitabh. So with your words,
So
you
at this moment, I would thank all the esteemed audience, and special thanks to a few dignitaries or special guests on today's occasion. Again, Mr. Ravi Shankar sir and Mamta ma'am for being gracing the occasion, and Vijay Raghavan sir directly joining us from Chennai, and one of our friends who had joined us from Dubai, and also a team of doctors, the Corona warriors, who joined us in the middle party, and they left because they had their own medical duties to perform from Jabalpur. And also all the very best for your efforts that you are making us fight against the current crisis of Corona. And with these words, I would again like to extend special thanks to the Sky Foundation, the EduSTEM, the EduSTEM Initiative Global, and all the TRIOCA of the three WIPRE clubs who had joined hand in hand for arranging all such platform for all the speakers from the past 5 days that we have been conducting events ranging from local to the international level. This is in fact a short break that we will be taking on this occasion. And I would just give you a hint, a small hint, that we will very soon be joined by a special session on astrophotography by a very, very budding, young, talented astrophotographer from North India, Utkarsh Mishra, and who many of his pictures have been featured over the NASA's official platform as Astronomical Picture of the Day APOD platform. So very soon you will all be, I am very much pleased to inform you that you will be very much be able to hear from him, from his experiences, and gain more insights into the real astrophotography. So for further details and further such seminars, kindly be stay attuned to us, because we are planning in the month of April itself, and as in the month of June and May and June, extra bonanza by the series of Astronomy Delights. So once again, thanks all, thanks to all. Stay safe, stay healthy. With this, I would like to wind up today's session. Thank you, thanks a lot. Good night, everybody.